Welcome back to One American Baseball Podcast. This is episode 31, and we're coming down to the home stretch in the season. We got about 30 games left in the season. The Guardians and Reds are kind of on the cusp of the playoffs. The Guardians unfortunately went kind of in the wrong direction this week, but the Reds are very much still in it. There are less and less teams that can say that they're in the playoff race, and yeah, the Guardians played themselves out of the playoff race. So we'll get into all that. We'll break down the last week of baseball as we always do, and then we're gonna talk about some things that we noticed around the league. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Jaden, how's it going today?
I'm doing all right. Like you said, my Red Legs are still in it. They're a game and a half back as we record here on Monday, August 25th. The the Mets, the Reds are doing just enough right now. The Mets are really helping them out because they're not playing any better than the Reds are, which is keeping the Reds right in that race. Um, but it's something I say every week. The Reds are just too inconsistent to make the push that they really need to. It feels like all the teams that are really in it this year have gone on extended winning streaks. I mean, we've seen the Brewers go on two winning streaks of 10 plus games. So, teams that really can contend tend to go on these longer or not maybe not winning streaks, but sustained stretches of winning ball games. They're not winning a series here, dropping the next series. It's, win series after win series after win series. And the Reds are playing really inconsistent ball, and they're not doing that. Their longest win streak on the season is 5 games, and they sort of follow the pattern of, win five, lose three, win three, lose three, stuff like that. And they don't ever really help themselves, you know, by just stacking series wins. At least they haven't up to this point in the season, which is really what's kept them out of the playoffs as we sit here now. I mean, like I said, they're only a game and a half back, and like you said, they're still very much in it. But they could be. I think they could probably be pushing for the second wild card spot if they could just play a little if they had just played a little bit more consistently up until this point in the season. I think it wouldn't even really be a conversation of will the Reds make the playoffs. It'll be a conversation of what seed exactly will they end up with. And I think this inconsistency is, you know, due to the fact that this is still a really young lineup. I mean, Noelvi Marte, I think, is 23, Ellie is 23. This is Matt McLean's first full season in the big leagues. Um, Spencer Steer is still relatively young. Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, all of these guys are very young, and this is the first time really that they've played meaningful baseball. I mean, 2023 was meaningful down the stretch, but that was only because they went on that lightning in a bottle 12-game win streak. Without that win streak, that season would have been another just so-so season for a Reds baseball team. Um, and so I think, this is the first season where they've really felt that pressure. Um, and they're young and they don't know how to handle it. So I think that's leading to some of those inconsistencies that um, can be pretty frustrating for Reds fans. It's also, the first season under a new regime, which with a new approach. Chris Valleca is, a very much you want to hit line drives up the middle and to the opposite field, and string hits together. It's not a power approach at the plate, and you're looking to do damage with the home run. And Tito's preaching base running differently. So there's an adjustment period with that too. And somehow still, this team is only a game and a half out. This feels like, it feels like a season where this Reds team shouldn't even be in the conversation. And yet here we are with about a month left, and the Reds are right there, and they kind of control their own destiny in a little bit with a series left to play against the Mets in early September. But along with those inconsistencies comes some pretty tough defense at times, and it's cost them some ball games here recently. I talked about it last week with the Brewers series, but this team tends to make errors at the worst time, and it kills them, and it kills a lot of their momentum, and it really loses them a lot of games. I mean, clean defense probably. I mean, if all other things the same, clean defense, they sweep the Brewers. Um, and that's a series where in in real life they only took one game, but if they play clean defense, they sweep that series, and they're in a playoff spot right now, and you're feeling really good about this team, but they just haven't played good enough defense at times to, and that goes back to those inconsistencies. They are second in the MLB in errors since the trade deadline. Um, they dropped the series to the Snakes this weekend. It's a series that they definitely should have won. But catcher's interference, which gets scored as an error, and it is an error, really, I think, led to the loss in game one of that series. There was a strikeout that was called back due to catcher's interference. The batter is awarded first base, and then the next batter after that hit a 3-run home run. So that's at least one run that you're gifting them through an error because that batter reaches base on what should have been a strikeout. And who knows if that, changed the way the pitcher pitched the next at bat, or, I mean, it probably affects the pitcher's mentality going into that next at bat. So, it's really frustrating with this team at times. They just shoot themselves in the foot a lot, it feels like. In the last 9 games, they've made 3 errors in 3 of those games. So I mean, that's not ever good. Um, Yesterday was one of those games where they made 3 errors and somehow they won that game. You're not going to win a lot of games where you make 3 errors in a game, but the Reds also don't get swept. So I guess that sort of offset the 3 errors in one game there. But even if the errors don't lead to runs, they hurt your pitchers. Brady Singer had to labor a couple innings where he probably shouldn't have because of errors. Um, made his innings a little more stressful, drove the pitch count up. So, that's either going to contribute to fatigue down the road later, or, he has to get pulled out of the game early. And then your bullpen, which, I touched on the bullpen fatigue last week, but this bullpen has been overworked, especially the back end guys. Then they have to come in and pitch and cover more innings than they needed to, and it leads to bullpen fatigue. So, it's errors are costly even if they don't lead to runs because they're leading to, you know, your pitchers having to pitch more, and it builds on them. And we're coming down to the stretch where pitcher fatigue is really gonna start to become critical here in the last month. You're hoping that also hurts the Mets because at this point you have to scoreboard watch as a Reds fan, I think, a little bit. The Mets starters have not been going deep into games. That's been well chronicled. So you hope that, you know, that fatigue hurts the Mets maybe more than it's going to hurt the Reds. But the Reds, like I said, they aren't really helping themselves with how inconsistent they are and how bad the defense has been at times. And it's also frustrating because this front office and this coaching staff has preached, we're building this team to play good defense, and we have to play good defense, and they're not really doing it right now, and it's lost them quite a few games. So, um, it's all growing pains at the end of the day, I think, more than anything, and I think you know the Reds aren't out of it, so I shouldn't be looking to next year yet, but looking to next year, you hope that maybe um, this team continues to improve, and 2026 can be a really good year for the Cincinnati Reds. But we're still playing meaningful baseball this year, so you don't want to look too much to the future. Um, Speaking of playing meaningful baseball this year, we're about a month past the trade deadline now. So I wanted to look at how our deadline guys have been playing. Um, with about a month under their belt on the Reds, sort of go back and reevaluate it now with the lens of their performance on the Reds, and I'll go in order of how those deals were announced. So, starting with Cabrian Hayes, he had 392 plate appearances with the Pirates this season. He's at 77 with the Reds. His walk percent is up from 4.6 to 9.1, so he's um, pretty much doubled his walk percent, and his strikeout percent is down from 20.7 to 10.4. So he's cut his strikeout percent in half. So he's taking a much more disciplined approach at the plate, seeing better pitches, being willing to take his walks and not striking out as much, which is always going to lead to more success. He had an OPS of 569 with the Pirates. His OPS is up to 814 with the Reds. Um, I think a lot of that, when you get into the batted ball data, he's getting the ball in the air more with the Reds. So his ground ball percent is down from 49.5 to 41, and his fly ball percent is up from 31 to 39.3%. And he's also hitting the ball up the middle more. So that's putting the ball in the air up the middle is going to contribute to more hits, and putting the ball in the air in general is going to contribute to more hits. So it feels like, you know, the Reds said we're getting Brian Hayes to play Gold Glove level defense, but we think we've identified some things in his swing that we can fix and turn him into a better hitter. And it seems like right now that does seem to be the truth. His OPS, like I mentioned, is 814, and he's hitting the ball um, in places where he's going to be more successful at a higher rate. So, maybe the Reds did find something in Brian Hayes with his swing, and they managed to fix that. So, um, that's been really exciting to see. He's been one of our best hitters since the deadline. If you look at some of the metrics, and he's also playing Gold Glove level defense at third base and getting outs for this team that no other third baseman in the organization is going to get. I'm sure everyone who listens to this podcast has seen the play where in against the Angels, it was a comebacker that kicked off Brady Singer's cleat. He charged barehanded it and threw it to first to get the guy out. And that guy's a pretty quick runner. So, he's doing things like that. And he's also hitting to the tune of an 814 OPS. So this really seems like a win of a trade at this point. Like I mentioned in my initial reaction to the trade, if they could just get him to be a league average bat, um, this was a really good trade. I think, right now he's about a league average bat, if not a little bit better. And he's still playing elite defense. So it's really exciting to see. Um, Hopefully he can keep it up going into September, because that would be huge for this team to get a bat that maybe they didn't expect to be up here um, and helping out this lineup. Now, Zach Littell, he had 133.1 innings pitched with the Rays. Um, he's at 29.2 with the Reds. It's, there's some sample size bias in evaluating all of these guys. I think sample sizes definitely hurt pitchers more than they hurt hitters. I don't really have any data to back that up, just more of a personal opinion. Um, but he's if nothing else, and the stats are they're all right. I don't think they're amazing, and I'll get into them in a second. But if nothing else, he's provided stability to the rotation at a point where it was needed. I mean, um, you know, right around the deadline, you had Chase Burns go down with an injury. Hunter Green wasn't back yet. Nick Lodolo went down with the blister. And so you really needed um, just some stability in the rotation. And Zach Littell provided that. Um, so, if nothing else, I think that was a win. His ERA with the Rays was 3.58. It's up to 3.92 with the Reds. So, not a huge difference, but up a little bit. And his BABIP is up with the Reds. So, from where it was with the Rays. So he could be getting a little unlucky, or, he could be regressing to the mean a little bit. I think, that's the tricky thing with BABIP is it's hard to tell if it's real, if it's a regression to the mean, or if it's um a little bit of luck. But the ERA is in an all right spot at a 3.92. I don't think that's too concerning. Now the concerning thing is walks per nine are up from 1.4 to 2.6. Um, and like I've mentioned in the past, it just feels like this organization and this pitching staff, they walk too many guys. And I don't know if that's like a organizational pitching strategy thing. I don't know if, it's our catcher's room is not calling the right pitches at the right time. I would think Jose Trevino knows what he's doing behind the plate. Guys speak to his ability to call games, but um, you know, it's concerning when you trade for a guy who his whole thing is, oh, he doesn't walk people, and then his walks per nine is up a point since the trade. And like I said, it's a small sample size, so maybe there's some of that bias in there, but um, that's definitely a concerning number to me. I think he's going to move back to the bullpen now. Nick Lodolo will be back on Wednesday. He's going to make a start. So I think Littell will move to the bullpen. I think Nick Martinez now is going to stay in the rotation, and Littell is going to take on that swingman role because it's something he's able to do as well. And Nick Martinez has pitched really well for the most part this season. So I think they're going to keep him in the rotation, and Littell will slot into the bullpen. At least that's what it seems right now with Nick Lodolo coming back. Um, Now, the last trade acquisition that we got was Miguel Andujar, of course. He had 231 plate appearances with the Athletics. He's up to 59 with the Reds. His walk percent is also up like Cabrian Hayes's. It's up from 4.8 to 8.5. His OPS is up from 765 to 1.046. So the OPS has jumped up with the Reds. Now his BABIP is at 400 right now with the Reds. So like I mentioned, it's hard to tell with BABIP, but that definitely points to him getting a little bit lucky, I would think. Um, if you look at the batted ball stats, he's pulling the ball more, um, and with more hard contact with the Reds. So that's going to lead to some base hits. And he's a guy that puts the ball. He's putting the ball in the air and um, on a line at a similar rate to what he was with the Athletics. But if you're pulling the ball more and hitting it hard more, um, you know, that's going to lead to more home runs and more doubles if you're putting it in the air and on a line at about the same rate. And for the most part, the big takeaway with Miguel Andujar is that he's provided the Reds with a really great cleanup bat option, and he takes a pretty aggressive approach at the plate with his swings that you don't see from a lot of players in this lineup. And I think that's pretty refreshing for Reds fans. Um, Seeing a guy up there that's willing to swing big and sort of swing free is nice. At least I think it is. He lengthens the Reds bench. If a team brings in a lefty out of the bullpen late to face a guy like Gavin Lux, and you are in a spot where you need not a quality at bat, it's not a blowout where Gavin Lux can stay in the game and it doesn't really matter the outcome of the at bat. You can go to Andujar and he's going to give you a good at bat against a lefty. And he's also been pretty good against righties with the Reds too. They've been using him some against righties. He is currently dealing with a quad thing, so he's not playing as much right now, and you hope it doesn't lead to an IL stint because he's been really good for the Reds. But you know, he's still DHing. I think he's going to play mostly a DH role from here on out. Now, looking ahead for the rest of this week, we've got the Dodgers tonight until Wednesday, and that'll be the end of this West Coast swing. We've got one more in September, but finally, this West Coast swing is going to come to an end, and I can get back to some decent bedtimes. Um, once Wednesday is done. We're going to see Emmett Sheehan, Clayton Kershaw, and Shohei Ohtani starting for the Dodgers in this series, and the Reds will run out Hunter Green, Nick Martinez, and Nick Lodolo. Like I mentioned, Nick Martinez is going to make his start, and then Nick Lodolo is starting on Wednesday. So I believe that means Zach Littell is going to move to the bullpen. Um, I would say we have a pretty favorable pitching matchup going into tonight's game. Hunter Green has been good since his return from the IL, and Emmett Sheehan is probably one of the weaker Dodgers starters in their rotation. So we'll see how it goes. This lineup, like I mentioned, this lineup's super inconsistent. Like a lot of everyone knows who pays attention to Reds baseball, they could score 10 one day and then get two hit and shut out the next day. So, even though it's a favorable pitching matchup, it it doesn't really matter a lot with this lineup. Then after they get an off day Thursday, they come home and they take on the Cardinals in their weekend slate. The Cardinals are a team that's scuffling a little bit at the moment. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and the Reds have to do what they have struggled to do for most of this season, which is take advantage of a series against a team that isn't playing their best baseball at the moment. The Cardinals, they're only 2 games under 500, and if the Mets and the Reds both collapse and the Cardinals get hot, the Cardinals could be your third wild card team. They're not out of it yet. Same with the Diamondbacks. So, you've got to take care of business against these Cardinals and make it so that they aren't really a threat to your wild card chances, and you're also improving your own wild card chances by winning a series against them. I think a big question for this week is, I think as Reds fans, we're all waiting for the Sal Stewart call up. I'm Every time I refresh, Instagram or Reddit, I'm looking for the announcement that Sal Stewart's making his major league debut, and it hasn't come yet. But it feels like they can't keep ignoring what he's doing at AAA because he's playing amazing baseball down there. And Matt McLain continues to struggle. And I know that, this organization prides itself or thinks it prides itself on playing good defense. And Matt McLain's glove is one of the best at second base, really. And Sal Stewart would be a downgrade from that. But at what point can you justify sacrificing that offense for, a little bit of a better glove? And I think at this point, you have to go with offense at this point in the season if you really want to make that playoff push. The bats are in Louisville this week, so I'm wondering, could he be called up before the weekend set at home? That way he doesn't have to deal with travel out to the West Coast and then come immediately back to, you know, Cincinnati. But I just don't think that this organization, I think it would be a a fundamental failure of this organization to not call Sal Stewart up and at least give him a chance to help out in the last month of the season with the way Matt McLain is playing baseball right now. I get that he has a better glove at second base. I think you need to be willing to sacrifice some extra outs at second base for a bat that's going to help you because right now Matt McLain is not doing anything at the plate to help this team. And um, while he does make some plays at second base, it's not like he's playing Brian Hayes level defense or something like that. I just don't. If Sal Stewart isn't called up for this playoff push, I think it will not reflect favorably on how this front office is running this team. As far as the Mets are concerned, because like I said, you've got to do a little bit of scoreboard watching now if you're a Reds fan, or at least you feel like you do. They have the Phillies for three at Citi Field. Then they have four against the Marlins at home. So Mets play every day this week. Feels like a week where they could go 2-5 or 3-4. I mean, the Marlins aren't great, but they play teams tough. They don't really quit. The Mets bullpen is not very good at the moment, so um, the Marlins could definitely take that series, I think, or at least split it. And then the Phillies are one of the best teams in baseball. They're the best team in the NL East, and they're going to want to. The Mets aren't out of it for the NL East. If things were to fall their way, but I think the Phillies will want to go into Citi Field and make sure the Mets are out of it by the time they leave, at least as far as the division goes. So, you know, it feels like a week where the Mets could really lose a lot of ground. And the Reds need to find a way to help themselves because they have not been doing that. And so, if they could find a way if the Reds could find a way to go 4-2 this week, um, taking both of these series or sweeping a series. Um, it'd be huge for their playoff odds. Um, but like I said, this team hasn't really helped themselves a lot, and the Mets are starting to come back to the mean. They're finding their level because they were really bad there for a while, and that's not the team that the Mets are. So, like I said, the Mets are going to find it eventually. It feels like they're starting to find it now, and the Reds need to do something to help themselves out. But that's all I have for my Reds this week. Um, I'll let you get into your Guardians.
Yeah, I think going kind of way back to what you said about Chris Flake, I think is interesting because he did a really good job, all things considered, with the Guardians last year with his
Mhm.
approach to getting line drives and base hit after base hit. Do you think it's a byproduct of the ballpark that the Reds in that is kind of holding the back?
I I don't know. I would think that, but they played the Diamondbacks at Chase Field this past weekend, and the offense struggled for pretty much most of that series to string together hits. And I mean, the Diamondbacks do have an outfield that's pretty speedy and can cover a lot of ground, but they have to build an outfield like that because of the ballpark they play in. Um, maybe if the Reds played in a bigger ballpark, they would be a little bit better at that. But I don't know. I think prior to the Diamondback series, I would have agreed with you that the ballpark is maybe not their hitting approach isn't tailored to the ballpark. But after watching that series in Phoenix, um, feels like maybe this offense is just a hot or cold, streaky lineup. I don't know.
Yeah, that is definitely a small sample size with just the one series, but it
Yeah,
is it is kind of interesting to think about how much success, Chris Fallica had in Cleveland versus I guess
right.
in Cincinnati this year. I know the Reds have a better offense than the Guardians, but not by a crazy amount.
Yeah.
Um anyway though, I'll get into my Guardians. It's a lot of doom and gloom. The Guardians kind of played themselves out of the playoff race this week. They sit at 5 games out of the wild card and 12 and a half games out of the division. They have a 5% chance at making the playoffs now, according to Fangraphs, which, that's not, you can make up a lot of ground if it's June or July, but we're recording this on August 25th, and there are 33 games, I believe, left in the season. So that's a lot of ground to make up. I know it's 5 games and a lot can happen, but it's not like a division race where it's just one team at the top. And, in some years there are teams going back and forth with each other, but usually it's just one team at the top at this point in the year. With a wild card, there's so many teams that are in it, especially in the American League. A team is bound to get hot. So like whichever team that it has the third wild card spot is hot. So like it kind of sounds a lot. It's not insurmountable, but 5 games is definitely is quite a lot when it comes to the wild card race. Um, and they really didn't help their case this past week with getting swept by the Rangers. Now they are 0-6 against the Rangers and Mariners, which those are two teams that they are directly competing for in wildcard spots. So in the event that there is a tie in their record, the Rangers or Mariners will most likely get the tiebreaker unless the Guardians sweep both of them in their upcoming series coming up. But the Mariners come into town next weekend, so that'll be a pretty crucial series, assuming that the Guardians don't play themselves further out of it when they face the Rays, starting tonight and into Wednesday. But kind of getting into the Arizona series, it was a tough one. They did salvage game one of the series though, against the Diamondbacks. It it was a decently pitched game by Bibee. It was kind of an average start. He really was not able to hold a lead, which has been um actually no, I'm sorry. Bibee pitched game two, but I believe Gavin Williams pitched in game one. He pitched a really good game versus the Snakes. But and the offense did just enough, and the bullpen held its own. But game two is when the wheels started to really fall off, and the Guardians have lost five in a row at this point. Um, they got off to a really strong offensive start, and I thought that this team had really turned a corner when it came to its offensive struggles for a couple days. That Brave series last week was really tough, losing two out of three to a team that's far below 500. Um, but yeah, the Guardians look good, and then something happened where they just could not score a run to save their lives, and they lost that game 6-5, and then in game three, it was one of those heartbreaking losses that they've endured so many of those this season, and um, yeah, that was kind of the not the straw that broke the camel's back, but they had back-to-back nights where they lost absolutely heartbreaking games, but. Um, Silver lining that game three against the Diamondbacks was Parker Messick was absolutely fantastic. He made his big league debut. He pitched 6 and 2/3, very strong innings. Um, I personally wanted to see him finish out the seventh inning. I know that it was a lefty righty matchup, and it was I forget what the batter's name was, but he was batting ninth for the Diamondbacks, and he was their backup catcher. And Vogt pulled Messick. Um, before he faced them. And it turned out fine. Hunter Gaddis got the last out in the inning. So it didn't turn out to matter, but Messick was only at 83 pitches and he was rolling. And I would have liked to see him finish 7 innings. And that left a kind of an awkward position because Hunter Gaddis threw 1 inning. He got the last out of the seventh inning, and then he got the first two outs of the eighth inning. And then he brought in Cade Smith for to try to get a 4 out save. And it's it, it it's not only it's just an awkward transition that for Cade Smith, and he was really just thrown to the wolves on this. And there's an interview that with Cade Smith where he talked about his struggles with transitioning to a closer role, and it's just a completely different animal pitching in the ninth inning as opposed to, sometimes you come in the sixth inning, sometimes you come in the seventh, eighth inning. Like you're not necessarily, even though you come in the most high leverage situations in the game, the ninth inning is just a whole different animal. And it seems like Kate Smith is having a lot of difficulty dealing with that so far. But yeah, Kate Smith coughed that one up. Um, he didn't really have that bad of an outing. Game three against the Diamondbacks, he just made one bad pitch to Lourdes Gurriel, and then the offense just could not score in extra innings. They couldn't even get the ghost runner home, so that was the beginning of the end. And then they had to put Festa in for the 10th inning. So overall, I while Parker Messick was making his big league debut, and it's good to take him out while he feels good about himself. There's the other side of it where it's a close game, and you're kind of short on bullpen guys. Like you could afford to throw Gaddis and Smith out there, but outside of that, you really don't have anything. And in the event that the game went into extra innings, which it did, they had to put Festa in there, and that was just I knew that they had lost the game when Festa was in, and it was a tie game, and the Diamondbacks have a very good offense, so they won that game pretty handedly in the 10th inning. Not too many issues scoring there. So yeah, that was a heartbreaking loss, game three, especially after that a tough loss in game two. So and going into the Texas series, um, it was really a game where it was a series where the Guardians could have kept themselves in playoff contention if they won the series, but they got swept. And it really did not help. I think this was maybe the most painful loss of the year was game one, where they lost 3-2. They had a lead going into ninth inning. Cade Smith just coughed the game up. I don't know what Kate Smith's issue is. I talked about a tough transition from the role he was in to the closer role, but there's theories going around that he might be tipping his pitches. He might be, dealing with some sort of injury. Who knows? But Kate Smith coughed his second game in a row up, and that was just an absolute gut punch. And they lost that game like super duper quickly, and the bottom of the ninth inning. They were up 2-1, and then within 7 pitches, the Rangers won that game. So um, it was just a very shocking occurrence. And then the next two games, the Guardians got outscored 15-0. So that loss really deflated the team. And obviously they got beat 10-0 next game, and the offense just could not get anything going um, yesterday on Sunday. So just a very tough road trip for the Guardians. And yeah, like I said, kind of going into this homestand, the Rays come to town. They're facing Ian Seymour. So he's a pretty decent pitcher, and we got Bybee on the hill, and then Shane Baz, who's another pretty decent pitcher, tomorrow night versus Parker Messick. So that should be a pretty good matchup. And then game three of the series, they got a really tough matchup in Drew Rasmussen, who is kind of like the second coming of Tyler Glass now. Another kind of no-name guy in that Rays rotation they turned into a superstar. So he has a 2.65 ERA on the season versus Slade Cecconi, who's looked a little bit better. So, um, but the Guardians have really put themselves in a spot where they have to play perfect baseball if they want to make the playoffs, which is very unfortunate because have they dug themselves into a really deep hole with that 10-game losing streak, and then they won 21 out of 30 or whatever that stretch was. And that took so much effort to get back into the hunt. And then they had this recent slide, and it just feels like this team has nothing left to give. Um, and looking at the standings, maybe like you think that the Guardians have a chance, but watching every game and just assessing the eye test, this team just looks deflated, and it's really unfortunate. It's kind of hard to watch, but it kind of made me like while the team was really struggling this week, it made me kind of think about what exactly went wrong for this team. And I'm going to talk about a few of my big takeaways from the season as to I think what exactly went wrong for the Guardians. And the first thing, I think the biggest thing was the offensive inconsistencies. I think that has been the Guardians' Achilles heel all season, which initially stemmed from not building on last year's ALCS team from an offensive standpoint. They got Carlos Santana, and I mentioned before the season started that it's a pretty big risk acquiring Santana because he's 39 years old and he's remained healthy. He's been a beacon of health, but there's gonna come a time when his age catches up to him, and he still plays Gold Glove caliber defense, but that bat has really fallen off for Santana. I think he's lost a lot of power. There have been a lot of instances where he's hit balls to the warning track this year, where I think in previous years that they would have gone out of the ballpark. Um, I just think that's a byproduct of aging. And Santana has also been way less patient at the plate. He's had a lot lower quality of at bats overall. And it just, he's starting to look his age at the plate is what I'm trying to say. Um, another kind of key takeaway from this season of kind of what went wrong is the Guardians in general just regressed to the mean from an offensive standpoint. They got a lot of balls to kind of a lot of breaks to go in their direction last year. Um, whether that be, balls flying in the outfield and getting down for base hits, whether that be that wind tunnel they were working with last year. At Progressive Field, in right field where they had a huge wind tunnel going. That provided a lot of home runs for them, but they just haven't been pulling the ball like that this year. And I think just a combination of luck and then especially the bullpen, just a natural regression from the bullpen is another huge reason why the Guardians haven't been uh where they were last year. Another reason is this is a very obvious one, but the Ortiz and Clase situation. Luis Ortiz was their biggest acquisition of the offseason, and we had years of control under Luis Ortiz, and just like that, he's probably not going to step foot on a baseball field again. Same thing with Emmanuel Clase, our all-star closer, who put up a 4+ WAR season last year, point 0.6 ERA, finished third in Cy Young. I mean, that is a huge hit. And we've really noticed Clase's absence with some of the recent performances from Cade Smith. And I don't really blame Cade Smith solely in this situation. I think he was put in a tough spot and he's been kind of overworked the last couple years. So I really don't blame Cade Smith at all. But yeah, Clase's absence has been very, very noticed. Um, and another kind of a little bit more minor reason, but something that's been frustrating me all season and even kind of a little bit last year was the managerial decisions that Stephen Vogt makes. I touched on the decision that Vogt made in the Diamondback series when he pulled Parker Messick a little bit early. I don't think it ended up being a big deal, but what I think the thing that frustrated me the most about that game was that he pulled Hunter Gaddis with 2 outs in the eighth inning, and then Cade Smith had to try it for a 4-out save. It's stuff like that where he gets a little bit too fine with his matchups and platoons and stuff. He sort of and Hunter Gaddis was rolling. He didn't allow any hits. He retired 3 in a row. And yeah, he just I feel like Vogt doesn't trust his gut enough. He doesn't trust the eye test, how people are feeling. He sort of, obviously you know that you're dealing with human beings, but there are a lot of factors outside of what shows up on the stat page that you got to consider, such as, you know, um, just how the momentum, relievers' energy, just a whole variety of things that I think he gets a little bit too fine with as far as managing his pitching staff. So um, and he kind of overcorrects it a little bit. Sometimes he takes pitchers out a little bit too early. Sometimes he leaves them in a little bit too late. And it seems like he can't really find that balance of, when to take pitchers out. And it's only his second year of managing a baseball team, so um, you got to remember to have a little bit of patience with Stephen Vogt. But at the same time, I feel like some of his managerial decisions, not only last year in the playoffs, kind of hurt the team, but I think it kind of shined through a little bit more because the bullpen hasn't been lights out like it was last year. I feel like last year with the decisions he made, he got kind of bailed out with one of the best bullpens in over a decade that baseball's seen. So, um, but kind of looking at another thing I was thinking about is what does this team look like next year? You have Lane Thomas and Carlos Santana from the offense who are going to be free agents at the end of the season. I don't think either of them are going to come back. I think what our outfield looks like next year is Steven Kwan is going to be like our everyday left fielder, obviously. Angel Martinez is going to be our everyday center fielder, and then I think we're going to see a combination of CJ Kayfus, David Fry, and Daniel Schneemann in the outfield. David Fry, I think, is going to be a huge question mark next year as to what form we're going to see him in. Are we going to see him in that 2024 All-Star form where he was able to be a super utility guy, play a little bit of right field, play first base, platoon here and there, kill lefties? And I think that'd be huge for this team if David Fry returns to even 80 to 90% of that all-star form that he was in last season. So I think that's gonna be our outfield next year. And then our infield, obviously Jose is gonna be at third base. We'll have Gabriel Arias and Brian Rocchio in the middle infield. I do think that Travis Bazzana is going to be on the team at some point next year. I think it's going to be a question of whether he makes a team out of spring training or whether they're going to bring him up in May or June or something like that. But I think with the way that he's going right now, barring an injury, I think the latest we'll see Bazzana is probably like May of next year. So he's going to be playing second base. I don't think they have any other plans for Travis Bazzana at this point. It is going to be a little bit of a step down from the defense that Brian Rocchio has provided recently at second base, but the Guardians are going to have to make a decision on what they do in that middle infield, whether they stick with Arias long term or stick with Rocchio long term, or if they convert Arias to a third baseman and then they DH Jose Ramirez a little bit more. Kind of seeing as Carlos Santana is probably no longer going to be a factor on this team, so that does kind of open up a DH spot where Jose can share third base and DH, and then Manzardo and Fry can also DH here and there. But Yeah, Kyle Manzardo is going to be a huge part of this team. He's going to be in the middle of that lineup. Um, I don't see Bo Naylor, leaving at least, next year. So Bo Naylor is going to be our everyday catcher. And then Austin Hedges is also a free agent at the end of the season. I think there's a pretty good chance that we re-sign Austin Hedges for a 1 year deal. Um, or we could see some, veteran backup catcher, kind of bring up, continue to mentor Bo Naylor. And then I think we could see Cooper Ingle towards the end of next season. He's a catching prospect, pretty promising bat. So also mentoring Cooper Ingle a little bit. And then the rotation is going to be Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, John Means, Parker Messick, and Slade Cecconi. I think that's the order the rotation is going to be in next year. I do think that Gavin Williams seems to be our ace going forward. John Means is making his rehab starts right now. He's looked really good. He made a rehab start with the captains last week. So we could see John Means as early as mid-September. Um, and we have him signed through the end of next season. So I think his ceiling will be like a Matthew Boyd type. But we should have John Means for the whole season next year. So we hopefully we get 20 to 25 starts out of John Means. That'd be huge to provide some stability in that rotation. I do think Parker Messick is good enough to be in the back of this rotation, as well as Slade Cecconi. I think Logan Allen, Joey Cantillo are going to be depth options. Probably one of the two is going to be a long relief pitcher. Um, and then additionally, our bullpen, we're going to have, Kate Smith's going to be our closer. We, who knows what we're going to do if we're going to sign a closer in free agency. I think if the Guardians make a big move in free agency, it's going to be for a closer. Um, Hunter Gaddis, Tim Herron, Eric Sabrowski, Sam Hentges should be back next year, and he hasn't pitched in a couple years full time in the big leagues, but he was a huge part of those 22 and 23 bullpens. So hopefully, after it's hard to tell after the shoulder surgery he went through and how much time he's spent sidelined, but I'm hoping Sam Hentges sort of returns to that form he was in. Um, We'd also see Daniel Espino come up next year. He's coming back from a pretty brutal arm injury, but he's a pitching prospect who has very promising stuff. He was came up as a starter and he's able to throw triple digits, elite slider and elite fastball. So that's a perfect recipe for a closer, and he hasn't really been, stretched out to be a starting pitcher quite yet. So we could see, Daniel Spino come back in the minor leagues by the end of the year and maybe make the big league roster out of spring training. So that's kind of the pipe dream with Daniel Espino, is to be kind of a long-term back in the bullpen piece, but and then possibly Cal Steven to make his debut next year, maybe be a depth piece in this rotation. So, but that's all I have as far as the Guardians go for this week. So, we're gonna move into our around the league segment next. So.
Before we do that, Chris, I did want to ask, I know we discussed it a little bit this past weekend, but I wanted to get your thoughts now with the Rangers series out of the way. Um, let's say, I'm not wishing for this, or I'm not trying to put bad vibes out there, but let's say this week goes poorly for the Guardians. They drop the series to the Rays and the Mariners. Travis Bazzana is in Columbus. Do you think, I mean, there gets to a point in team seasons when they realize they're not going to make the playoffs and they sort of go, let's see what we've got for next year. Do you think they bring Bazzana up? I mean, if things go poorly, do you think Bazzana is sort of like a let's see what we got September call up, or do you think he stays in Columbus?
I think he stays in Columbus just because he has only played about 11 games in Columbus so far.
Okay.
I
Hmm.
think that if you're going to bring him up, he needs to be able to play every day. And you
Hmm.
can't I know it's a short period of time, but it it's kind of a line you're teetering with,
Right.
continuing to develop somebody and getting them big league experience. And I don't think you can have Travis Bazzana getting everyday big league experience the way that this roster is constructed currently. I
Mhm.
think there will be a couple spots that open up in this roster for next year for him to come up and be an everyday contributor on that team next year. So not to be a huge pessimist, but I don't or a wet blanket or anything, but I don't think we're gonna see Travis Bazzana. I could be wrong. I kind of hope I'm wrong. It would be really cool to see Travis Bazzana in the big leagues this year, but I just don't see, how the roster is constructed with how he's going to fit in at this point. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see him next year. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, getting into around the league, you have quite a few storylines to talk about here, so I'll let you get into that.
Yeah, I wasn't super busy yesterday. I was just watching the baseball tonight on ESPN before Sunday night baseball, and a lot of these just happened to come up as headlines, and I thought, oh, those are pretty interesting. So my first one is Cal Raleigh. He set the catcher home run record yesterday. He homered twice. He passes Salvador Perez for the most home runs in a season by a primary catcher. He's at 49 now on the year. Um, a lot of people still think Aaron Judge is going to be the AL MVP. I think it should go to Cal Raleigh. He's
I
playing
agree.
he's now set the single season record for home runs by a catcher at 49. He's probably, he's barring disaster, he'll be at 50 at least. He'll be in the 50s at least by the end of the season. And, he plays elite defense at a premier position on the diamond. Um, he's a catcher doing this. That's unheard of. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
unheard of. He just broke the record. Um, and most valuable player, I think at times it gets watered down to, oh, what guy has the best stats, or oh, what guy plays for a big market team and has all right stats. Um, if you really want to avoid award this to the most valuable player, I don't think there's a world in which you can convince me Aaron Judge is more valuable to his team than Cal Raleigh is. Um, they just stick Aaron Judge out in right field. He's not a great defender. Um, he's been hurt for some time. Cal Raleigh's played the entire season at catcher. He's putting up record-breaking numbers. Um, I think if Cal Raleigh doesn't win the AL MVP this year, it would be a pretty big snub, I think.
Yeah, you got to remember with catchers, they're managing an entire pitching staff, and that Mariners pitching staff is elite,
Right.
especially that starting rotation with, a few guys coming back healthy. To be able to play defense, one, play defense at elite level, and two, manage a pitching staff with, pitch comm and everything going on. There's so much film that's out there on pitchers, and being able to navigate that as a catcher and continue to, have your pitching staff perform at a high level while also hitting home runs at an elite rate. OPS is at, elite. That like you said, it is unheard of. And with Aaron Judge missing a little bit of time and, playing right field, I do think that the the edge goes to Cal Raleigh at this point. So
Yeah, I saw something today that they have the same F war now too. So if you want to do it based on war, they're tied as far as F war goes. So, but I I don't think you should base it on war. I think it should go to Cal Raleigh.
and
Um,
and the Mariners are well, the Mariners are in a spot where if the season ends today, they're going to make the playoffs. And
right.
you could safely say without Cal Raleigh, I don't think the Mariners would be in that spot
Yeah,
without the
definitely.
production he provides.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. My next one here is that Junior Caminero has 37 home runs on the year. I saw that pop up on my screen, and I had to quickly get on Baseball Reference because I thought I either had seen it wrong or um, it was a typo or something. But Junior Caminero will probably hit 40 home runs this year. I think he was a pretty big breakout candidate for you coming into the year. Um,
mhm.
he wasn't so much on my radar, and I believe it's probably because he was in the Guardians system. But pretty insane year from Junior Caminero, and I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Yeah, I think he was, going into this fantasy season. He's Junior Caminero has turned out to be my best fantasy um player, or at
Hmm.
least hitter this year. And yeah, he was one of my biggest sleeper picks for the year. But yeah, the Guardians made a huge mistake. I think that I'm trying Chris Antonetti even publicly admitted that that was a bad trade that the Guardians made. They traded, I think it was 2020 where they traded Junior Caminero for Tobias Myers, or 2021, one of the two. But yeah, Tobias Myers is now a Brewer, and he's been injured for a lot of the season. But anyway, yeah, Junior Caminero and that Guardians infield would be fantastic right now. So who knows where the Guardians would be if they held on to Junior Caminero. So
Yeah, that definitely it's probably a pretty crappy hypothetical to think of. So we'll move on from it.
yeah. Yeah.
My next one is Zach Wheeler out for the season. He was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome. I think last week they announced he had a blood clot in his shoulder, and then this week he was diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome. He got surgery on it. I think the timeline is 6 to 8 months for that. So we won't see Zach Wheeler again until next year. Um, I don't think the Phillies really feel much of an effect from this, honestly. I mean, obviously Zach Wheeler was in the Cy Young race. It's Paul Skeens' award to lose at this point now that he's out. But the Phillies rotation is still one of the best in the MLB, even losing Zach Wheeler, which speaks to how good that rotation is. Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, um, two really good pitchers.
Mhm.
Um, so the Phillies lose Zach Wheeler. I don't think it really hurts them too much.
Yeah, you really got to have three good pitchers
Hmm.
in your starting rotation, and had three. The Phillies really had four or five like
Yeah.
really solid playoff pitchers in their rotation. So, well, it does hurt for the Phillies to lose Zach Wheeler. It's not going to be, a season killer or anything. Like you said, Christopher Sanchez had a huge breakout season, and Ranger Suarez has really. I think he was hurt for I think the first half of the year, but he's had a really nice second half, and then Jesus Luzardo. Don't forget that
Yeah.
Jesus Luzardo was in the Cy Young conversation the first couple months of the season, but he had a couple
He's
clunkers.
recently rounding back into form now too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, that's a rotation where, with Zach Wheeler in the playoffs, when you go to four guys, typically you go to four guys at
Hmm.
three in some cases in the playoffs because you
Yeah.
get the build in rest days. That's a rotation with Zach Wheeler that, I don't think anyone wants to face. And they've lost Zach Wheeler now, but even still, um, that's a playoff rotation that would be a nightmare with Sanchez, Suarez, and yeah, Jesus Luzardo. It's just, I don't think it's one that I would be excited to face as a Reds fan. I think, and I'll get into this in my next point. I think the Reds will, at least, if the Reds make the wild card, I think they'll avoid the Phillies, um, at least in the wild card round. But yeah, that'll lead me into my next one here. The Padres and the Dodgers are tied atop the NL West. So they played their last series against each other this past weekend. The Padres took that series 2-1. So it's going to be a really interesting battle to see who takes the NL West. Um, whatever team doesn't win it is going to get a wild card spot, and I think that's important for Reds fans to pay attention to because if the Reds make the playoffs, I think they're probably going to play the winner of the NL West. So the Brewers, I think, barring something unforeseen, they're going to get the bye. Um, the Phillies, I think, will be good enough to play, or yeah, I think the Phillies will. No, we play the Phillies then. Never mind, because the worst wild card team plays the second seed. So, um, scrap that completely. It's not really important for Reds fans. I think whoever wins the NL West will have a worse record than the Phillies. Um, and now I am worried if the Reds make the playoffs because we'll have to see uh, Suarez and Sanchez and Luzardo in a wild card series. So never mind. That's cause for concern, Reds fans. Yikes! I didn't brain fart when writing the outline. Maybe we want the Phillies to fall apart a little bit, and the NL West team to play a little bit better than them down the stretch, so we don't have to see that rotation in the wild card series with the Phillies. So, but yeah, Reds aside, it's going to be a really fun battle for the NL West this last month.
Yeah, for sure. I also I as a Guardians fan, obviously Shane Bieber making his Blue Jays debut was very interesting for me. He pitched an absolute gem, 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, no walks allowed. This Blue Jays rotation is another rotation that you're not going to want to face in the playoffs. Max Scherzer has had kind of a career renaissance, and you don't really want to face Max Scherzer in the playoffs just because of his experience level with so many playoff runs and also winning that 2019 World Series. Um, he kind of brings that intensity to the table. I feel like he could really turn it on when it matters. So, um, Jose Barrios and Kevin Gausman have been having nice seasons, and then Eric Lauer is another guy in that rotation that's been really, really underrated this year. He's posted a 8-2 record with a 2.76 ERA and 14 starts, 20 games pitched. So, yeah, those Blue Jays they've put together a pretty sneaky good team. And the funny thing is, there's so many former Guardians on that team that they turned Miles Straw into a good player. They've Ernie Clement has really broken out with the Blue Jays as well. He's a really nice utility guy for them, and Ernie Clement's a guy that would fit in really, really well with the Guardians. So kind of sad that we don't have Ernie Clement anymore, but he's a super likable player. So and obviously Andres Jimenez hasn't had the greatest offensive season, but he still plays elite defense. So um, but I think that's all we have for this week.
Hold on,
So.
Chris. I got to correct myself again. I was wrong. I was right, then I was wrong, and I thought I was wrong, but I was right. So the top two seeds get a bye. So new playoff format, top two seeds get a bye. So the Brewers get a bye. I think they're gonna have a bye. The Phillies are probably gonna have a better record than whoever wins the NL West. They'll get a bye. So the Reds would then play the winner of the NL West as they would be the best division winner with the worst record, or they'd be the division winner with the worst record. So it is important. Reds fans, keep an eye on the NL West. The Phillies, hopefully we don't see them in the wild card round if we make the playoffs. But the top two seeds do get a bye. Uh, New playoff format.
Yeah, the Padres and Dodgers are no slouches either. So,
Definitely. I mean, you're going to play a good team no matter what.
yeah,
I like our
for
chances
sure.
better, I think, against the Padres or the Dodgers than the Phillies in a 3-game series.
Yeah, both teams have had their fair share of issues this year.
Yeah.
The Padres have a fantastic bullpen though. I mean, they could almost have a rotation of nobody. Like they have a bullpen that's like as elite as the Guardians was last
Yeah.
year. That's especially with the addition of Mason Miller. So, and Mason Miller's been really good since he's joined the Padres as well. So, um But I believe that's where we're gonna leave you guys off
Yeah,
this week.
I'm done
So
for now. No more correcting myself.
so yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure to give it a like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to give it 5 stars, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.